I personally would love to see a grizzly season. I hunted over near the Augusta area, and on a 10-day hunt, we filmed 11 different grizzly bears. They are well above carrying capacity of the land in our state, in Wyoming. They're, really moving over into Idaho. It's flat and simple. It's a political issue at this stage of the game.
Right.
Their numbers are where they should be. They're recovered. It's an easy propaganda tool for the anti-hunters, just like the wolf is.
All right, thanks for coming by.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
It was that was a great text to get of, hey, I'm in the area. So,
which is weird to say because up until just a month ago,
you
lived
always
right
in
here.
the area.
Yeah.
So you moved down to Utah. And it's funny actually that you texted me because I think it was like hours after Laura had just left.
Oh,
your old roommate.
Yeah, Laura Zara. Yeah, I actually got to see her and her girlfriends a couple of days ago. We did a drive-by hello at the gas station, which is so weird because, she's lived with me the last 3 years, and it's really fun, living alone here in Montana to have someone like Laura Zara live with you who's always up for an adventure. Or, hey, let's render bear fat today, or hey, let's do this, let's make some, herbal stuff. And it's weird now not having her around all the time.
Yeah.
I miss her. I miss her and Naron. So it was really fun to get to see her. And
all three of them came out and did the podcast Sunday night.
Oh, great.
And, it was a blast.
I bet. Can't wait to listen.
Wild group of chicks.
It is.
That's the thing about Laura is, she's, there's the TV side, the TV stuff or whatever. And you watch a lot of that stuff and you're like, oh, are these people, do they really live and do what they say they do? And then there's Laura and it's like, oh, you don't even know the half of it.
Oh, exactly. That's so true. It's really funny because I felt the same way. I'm like, how is this cute little thing such a, badass in the mountains? And, in the back of your mind, you're like, what? And I'd seen her on Naked and Afraid once, but didn't really know a whole lot about her. And we really clicked right away. But Laura's like that. She can just click with people right away. But she moves in, and it wasn't that long after that. My dog had surgery. Petey had surgery, and he had a big stitched wound. He had a big tumor that grew like literally overnight. I had no idea it was there. And then it got infected, and it was just nasty. He had surgery. That night he was home and still like kind of stumbling around higher than a kite. And I had company over. Laura was there. Plus I had Paulie and Dee, my friends. And though we were going back and forth from the porch, the door hit Petey on the head, and it broke his stitches.
Oh.
And Laura's like, do you have yarrow in your yard? I'm like, what? Like, I don't know I have to say I'm more of the animal meat side of things than the,
the vegetation plant.
Herb,
herb girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, medicine
and I'm like,
woman.
I don't know. She runs outside. She comes back a second later with this, what looked like weeds to me. And she's like, do you have a mortar and pestle I can grind? I'm like, nope. She throws it in her mouth, starts chewing up the yarrow into this wad. She puts it on Pete's neck, and I'm not kidding, within 2 minutes she lifts it off, the bleeding had stopped. And it's a coagulant. So, and it's a weed everybody has in their yards. It's this white little flowered weed.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was. I'm like, okay, sign, seal, deliver. The girl's legit.
Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah, it's a true story.
Yeah, we could probably sit here for 2 hours and just tell Laura stories, especially about at your house with all the dead shit in the driveway and the amount of bloodbaths of different, roadkill animals she's brought home and done in your driveway.
Oh my gosh. I literally 2 weeks before I was moving, Laura's like, do you mind if I butcher an elk in the garage? I'm like, yeah, like, okay. Sure enough, she did in the garage. And, it was a roadkill that she got permission to take, and nothing goes to waste. And if you happen to come by and walk into my garage at that moment, you would think these two girls are serial mass murderers. Like, yeah.
No, when we started getting to know each other a little bit, she came by, and literally every time she came by, and I said this on the podcast with her, every time she came by, like, she'd be here for a couple hours. I think we built a knife, or we did something at one point, and like every single time she'd be like, all right, I gotta go. I've got a deer in my car. I was like, what? I'm like, yeah, I found a deer on the way here, and I put it in my trunk, and I need to go take care of it. And I'm like, You've had a deer in your car the whole time you've been sitting here? Like,
that's totally true. And she does, a lot of it is roadkill for Naron, her dog. She feeds him, roadkill and stuff. But thankfully, the girl just got a truck, because if there's anyone who needs a truck, who throws, she was driving a little Jeep before, hatchback Jeep style. That girl needs a truck for all of her roadkill for sure.
Yeah. Pull that thing right up closer.
Okay.
The truck, I told her I actually didn't even recognize when she drove in. Because I was just used to her driving her car, and I was like, "Oh, you're upgrading."
Yeah,
it's funny. They left the other night. We had dinner after the podcast, and I don't know. It was probably 10:30 or 11 when they were leaving, and my wife and I were headed to bed. And I get a call from her, and she had a flat tire out in the driveway. So I went back out, and we had to pull her truck in the garage and change her tire. Which luckily, she found it there and not on a mountain somewhere.
Oh yeah.
But she's quite the little adventurer.
And the reason we met.
What is?
Laura. I don't know if you even remember
I'm
that.
Sure.
Because when she moved in, she's like, "Oh my gosh, you got to come over to my buddy Josh Smith's house." Well, then I mentioned that to John Bear, my soon-to-be hubby in 1 month from today. He was like, "What? You're going to Josh Smith?" He has been he's going to be embarrassed that I say this, obsessed with you. Like from the beginning, like the youngest bladesmith to ever done it. Like he spouted off your bio for me, and he was just so excited. And then when you allowed me to bring him here, he was like a kid in a candy store. Like seriously, cool. Yeah, he's one of your biggest fans.
He's such a nice guy.
Oh my gosh, they don't come nicer than John Bear.
Yeah, he is so nice.
He is.
Yeah.
He's so authentic.
I was actually, frankly, I'm trying to be happy for you, but the fact that you're moving away from here, like I was hoping he was going to move up here and you guys were going to be close. Instead, you're going the opposite way. I'm like, well, damn, selfishly, kind of pisses me off.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
I'll be back up here a lot though. Like right now I'm back up. I'm bear bait in Idaho, like I have for the last 10 years with Heath, my producer, and staying with my neighbor Carrie and Eddie. They're just incredible people. So trust me, I'll be back up squatting wherever I can to have some time
you're always
in Montana.
welcome. You're always welcome here if for some reason your neighbors are busy or have company or whatever. So
nice, thank you.
Yeah. So you're moving down to Utah. So congratulations, by the way. You guys got engaged down at the Western Hunt Expo, right?
Yeah, the week of. Yep. Yeah. Thank you.
And did he ask you at the banquet?
No, a lot of people ask that because of that photo that we took. He asked me just a couple days before that. It was really cute. We went up to shoot my pistol because my stepson Brennan was coming in to the expo, and then after that we had a mountain lion hunt in Utah, and he was going to be shooting my Desert Eagle, so I just wanted to make sure it was on for him. We go out and do our favorite shooting spot. It's also where we buried Pete, my beloved Pitty, and so it's a special spot for us. And it was so funny the way it's so John Bear. He's just a cowboy, and it's freezing cold. We're about to get back into the truck and leave, and he goes to the front of his truck and he says, "What'd you do to my truck?" And I'm like, "Uh-oh." And so I walked around the front and he was on one knee and he said, "It's really cold out here." I go, "Yeah, let's head out." And he goes, and he pulled his hand out of his pocket and he said, "How about you warm me up and be my wife?" So it was super cute. It was total John Bear style.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Did you know it was coming at all? Were you suspecting it or?
A little, but I definitely did not expect it out there. So that was a nice little surprise. But yeah, we had talked about it just because logistically, it's a big move. I'm telling you. Well,
and when you guys, I mean, when you get to the age that we all are at, it's kind of like, it's like when my wife and I met. You're at the age where, like, you kind of cut out all the bullshit and you actually have like real conversations, and you're not 20 anymore, and like just everything on a whim. And so there's like, I can see where you would actually like have more life discussions, a little bit more, and kind of know what you're going to be doing a little bit going forward. But
yeah, absolutely. Especially with logistically. I mean, I gave up the Bitterroot for this man. That's a big deal.
Yeah, no shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
so like, yeah, he's absolutely worth it. And I'm super excited. We just found a home in Elk Ridge. But it was a big deal for me to move. I love Montana. How do you not? And I love the people. I love the hunting, and I was a commissioner. And so it was a big, big decision of picking up and moving my life. But there's not 1 ounce of me that worries about it. I'm just super excited to start that next chapter, and I know that I'll be back a lot. So
well, and you guys are also at a stage where you guys are, free to go and do whatever you want. It's not like you're tied down, you know, my wife and I talk about this, like we've got about 5 years left with kids at home. And then we're pretty free and clear, you know? So it's like for the next 5 years, I mean, we still get to do and go and have quite a bit of fun, especially they've gotten to that age where our kids pretty much just tell us what's going on, give us the schedule, you know, especially my girls. I'm just like, what's going on? What do I need to know? Give me my need to knows, and then we'll go about it. But yeah, you guys are definitely free and clear to just go and do what you want and take off, which is really cool. So it's not like you're stuck in Utah and can't.
No, exactly. We'll be traveling a ton.
Yeah. So John, I was going to talk about him for a second. He's an auctioneer, right? Unbelievable. Like when I watch him do what he does, I could sit and watch auctioneers. I don't know what it is about what auctioneers do and how they do it, especially the good ones. And John is so good.
Oh, thank you.
It's unbelievable. How long has he been doing that?
Oh, a long time, since his 20s. He actually went to auctioneer school. There's an auctioneer school. Did you know that? I didn't know that.
I did know that, but I only found that out a couple years ago because I was talking to another auctioneer just at like a fundraiser benefit, and he was really good. And it's like, how do you pick that up? And he said there's a school for it.
Yeah. So I think how John would tell the story, and you'll have to have him on here to tell it, but to give you the cliff notes, he basically went to an auction, thought, I could do better than that guy. And the funny thing is, if you know John Bear, he talks very slow. He's got people think he's from the South. Like he's got a Southern kind of draw, talks kind of slow, has a little swagger.
He is real cowboy.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. And when he told his mom that he wanted to go to auctioneer school, she was like, oh, honey. You know, I don't know if that's going to work out, kind of thing. And he went, and his dad's like, well, I'll go with you. So his dad went with him too, which is so cute.
Really?
And his dad does kind of fill in work for him, just to auctioneer here and there. His parents are just amazing. But yeah, I agree with you. So I've known John for years before we started dating, and we just kind of happened to be single at the same time, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I've always been blown away. I've gone to every conservation banquet known to man. Even before I moved out west, I was always going with my dad to Ducks Unlimited or, you know, whitetail banquets, Pheasants Forever in Wisconsin. And then of course here, and, you know, been doing Skull Bound for 14 years now and partnered with a lot of the conservation groups. I've gone to every banquet under the sun. And I just think he's the best of the best, you know.
Yeah.
And what I think makes him different is not just his auctioneering skills of his chant and his numbers and stuff, but he's so funny. He can stop in the middle of it and make a funny joke, or he's like, just the way he banters with the crowd is, I think, what makes him super special.
And I think there's a couple more things too. One, there's that, and I think that's, an auctioneer has to be able to improvise, you know, and you've got people in the crowd and they're shouting different stuff and they're starting to get into it, which is what you want. So it almost turns into a bit of a stand-up routine, you know, in a way, like you're in and out of that stand-up. But then you have to also keep the auction on track. You have to keep the things moving along, because there are auctions also that just go on forever. And by the end of it, you're getting to the bigger items or the bigger things, and half the people have left. You know? So you got to keep people's attention. But the other part of it, I think, that makes John so good at what he does is he's actually a hunter, and he actually is involved in what he does. You know, I've been to auctions where someone's trying to auction stuff off that they really have no idea about. And so you don't have that heart and soul in there. And so John can sit there and talk about an item or people at that company, and he can relate it to the crowd, which I think that's another big piece of it.
Yeah.
You know, when an auctioneer is really, truly into it.
I agree. And the fact that a lot of people don't even know that he, you know, like here in Montana, we have a commission, and in Utah, they have a board, you know, and he was the chairman of the board. He was in charge of the Wildlife Commission for, I think, 8 years. And then before that, 6 years, he served on the RAC. So, you know, for 14 years, just in those two categories, he's been super involved in wildlife management. And then he's been involved with Sportsmen's for Fish and Wildlife of Utah for, I think, since inception. Yeah. And so, yeah, he understands. And that's why it's so fascinating. I love it when, you know, those tags, he always says, you're so Wisconsin when you say tag. Those tags.
You met my mother-in-law downstairs.
Yeah,
she's assembling knives, Julie. She's from Wisconsin.
Oh.
And I didn't even mention it down there because I knew you two would it would turn into a half hour of you guys talking about Wisconsin. But we make fun of her all the time, and we always do that, Wisconsin. And then her A's, we're always like, "Arr," you know, so my kids are always, we start making like pirate noises at her when she's like, you know, the car and this and that. And she's always doing her like, "Arr." And so then she'll say something about her car, and my little girl or my boy or whatever will go, "Arg." We just hammer her about her accent from Wisconsin. It's
Yeah, I really get it saying tag, bag, and eggs. Eggs.
Egg.
I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
all the time. And it's so funny because I don't even ever hear it in myself, but I get people who kind of tilt their head and look at me and they're like, "You're not from Montana, are you?"
Yeah, exactly.
Minnesota or Wisconsin? They'll point at me and which one?
Yeah.
But no, John knows, and he's so involved in conservation. And when they sell those tags at the expo for, you know, this year, record-breaking numbers, and then you go online and you just see the idiots come out of the woodwork, and they're like, "I wonder where the money goes, and it's corrupt, and oh, rich man's disease, and da da da." And I think, you know, where else are you going to raise $12 million in the course of a weekend? If there's an individual, this is my opinion, but if there's an individual and he's willing to pay $500,000 for one deer hunt, good on him.
Right.
You know, and I just think there's a lot of people out there that are really, you know, scarcity mentality, jealous, must be nice. Oh, the rich guys get to go hunt. Where else? Do you know who benefits from that? The wildlife. And guess who benefits when the wildlife is flourishing?
Yeah,
we do.
everyone.
More sheep hunts, you know, more moose tags, more predator management, you know, and you can absolutely track dollar for dollar where that goes.
Yep.
And John is such a knowledgeable guy when it comes to that I just try to get him on every podcast so people understand where it goes, and they understand that we hunters are, you know, we're the animal lovers in this country. We're the ones raising the money. And if there's a couple of rich dudes who are in the crowd and want to pay $750,000 to go hunt Arizona, good on them.
Yeah, and that deer that hunter goes and takes, just as easily could have just been hit by a car in the middle of the night.
Oh yeah,
for nothing and died. Like the amount of deer that are hit every single day on the highway.
Yep.
Far exceeds the amount of deer, especially in a lot of these areas where those guys are buying those tags as limited draws and stuff like that. It's not just the hunters. I always like to say this too. Like, yes, we as hunters benefit from this, but everybody benefits. The people who like to just go hike and go bird watching, and all of a sudden there's a big beautiful buck standing there that they get to see, or you know, a doe and a couple fawns, and then the money that goes towards like the trail management piece, the hunting access, the buying land, you know, like what Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation does, where they're buying land to keep areas open and you know, preserve breeding grounds for elk or preserve habitat for them. But then that also frees it up for not only hunters to use it, but everybody to use it. Hikers, bikers,
bird watchers.
Yeah, and the hunting season's actually only short, you know, and that's the other thing. Like, you know, a lot of like the land conservation that's happening and stuff like that, it's for a month, 2, maybe 3 tops generally throughout the year that we're actually going to hunt that land. The other 9 months, that land is there for the public, for anybody to use, and it's not just hunters.
Exactly.
It's everyone.
Yep.
There's just so many misconceptions. And I mean, it's mind-boggling when you're at those auctions and you see how much money is going for that. But basically, it's a donation, it's a write-off for these guys, for their big companies.
Yep.
And they could go donate that to whatever tomorrow. You know, and if that person went and donated and wrote a check to a land conservancy the next day, they would all be praised.
Yep.
You know, so why aren't they being praised for what they're doing on Saturday night at a banquet?
Yeah, I think I'm just been convinced I think it's scarcity mentality, which, you know, someone's got more than I do. It's jealousy. You know, it's, turning it into a rich man's game. And I just think they're missing the whole entire point of where that money is going and how we are, like you said, perpetuating the herds and predator management. And, you know, when the sheep are really a fragile species, when they come down with pneumonia, who is, you know, going out there and taking rid of the rest of the herd and then reestablishing that herd? Typically it's dollars from hunters.
Right.
And like you said, everybody benefits, all the species benefit. And it's a beautiful thing. That's why I started Skull Bound. I was raising money for Ducks Unlimited and Pheasants Forever back in Wisconsin with my artwork. And then when I moved out here, started Skull Bound, one of the things I wanted to show was like, we hunters are such animal lovers. We want, you know, species to thrive and be healthy. And, you know, I wanted to show what a connection we have to our food and the land, and that it's just so missed in, I would say, most hunting shows or a lot of hunting TV. People just catch it or watch it and they think it's about pulling the trigger or how big is your bull, and there's a missed message there. And I tried to really incorporate that into the show.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I actually think, the word environmentalist got kind of a connotation to it in the last number of decades of if you're an environmentalist, you're kind of a crazy person, extremist or whatever. And, actually, I truly believe that hunters are the ultimate environmentalists. Yep. I mean, we actually really do care about the animal and the habitat that they live in, both. And so, and taking care of that and providing that, because we all want to see our sons and daughters be able to take part in this, and frankly, even more generations, from now, great grandsons and great granddaughters. And so, that's my biggest thing is I want kids to be able to hunt and fish like I got to do growing up.
Yeah.
And we're in a really special place out here, especially Montana, compared to a place like Texas. I don't know the percentages. You probably would. The percentage of public land in Montana versus like in Texas, where Texas is like 99% private.
Yeah. I don't know the percentages, but it's incredible.
Montana's like 70% public.
Yeah.
And it's huge. I mean, so is Texas, but it's, that being able to have access, because, hunting has become a bit more unobtainable in certain areas for people. It's a little bit more expensive. You do have to pay for access. If you're in Texas, you might have to pay to go on a ranch or something like that. The beautiful thing about, out west is, you can literally, we know people that ride their bike and go ride their bike up into the mountains and go hunt, and you can hunt for next to nothing.
Right.
Absolutely for free.
Yeah, there's so much access here, and it's important, like you said, to protect it, to make sure that we always have it. I know that's, one of the biggest topics out there right now. There's so many, though. I mean, being on the commission was incredibly eye-opening.
So how did you get on? I'd actually like to hear about how did you get on the commission? And I actually want to step all the way back here in a minute and talk about even how you got into all this in the very, very beginning. But how did the commission come to be for you? I
had a couple of friends through conservation groups, et cetera, reach out to me and say, hey, there is a commissioner position opening up on the commission. And quite frankly,
commission for wildlife, right?
Yes, the wildlife commissioner. Yeah, here in Montana. There are, the governor, so there were 5 commissioners. And the governor said, no, we need a commissioner for every single region in Montana. And there's 7 regions. And so he was looking for 2 add-on commissioners what was that? Don't ask me to do math this morning. A couple of years ago. And I got a couple of phone calls, one from George Betis, and another from my buddy Jeff Dara, and just kind of testing the waters and saying, hey, would you ever be interested? And quite frankly, I knew nothing about the commission. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I knew that there were commissioners. I didn't know the process. I actually still feel like it's muddied, it was overwhelming, and I was only a commissioner for a little over a year. Usually the terms are, longer than that, and then basically it's appointed by the governor. And so having these conversations with somebody, I'm like, yeah, maybe it would be a really great way to give back. I definitely got undersold on the time commitment involved. I'm like, well, I'm gone traveling a ton. Will I be able to do that? Oh yeah, you'll have a couple meetings here and there, and you've only got to meet with the commission, every quarter. Or actually, when I spoke with the governor, I think he said like 2 or 3 times a year. No,
I think any kind of public service you do, whether it's a county commissioner or a school board, I think that's 100% how it always goes.
Yeah, I think so too. If they would have told me how much work was really involved. And plus, I happen to, my buddy Robert Hanneman, who works for the Hunt and Fool, he's like, you got thrown into the fire. Like, when I became a commissioner, I didn't realize all these hot topics, from Yellowstone wolves to the elk management plan to all these things that were happening all at once. But
is this a paid position?
No.
Okay.
No. It should be. Yeah. No, it's not paid in any way, shape, or form. So that summer I got those calls from my friend, and then I said, I'd like to hear more about it. So yes, I will throw my name in the hat. So I went online, and it's an application you fill out, And obviously it's an important, this is Montana's wildlife in your hands. It's pretty important. So a pretty in-depth application process. And then you literally have an interview with the governor. And so I sent in my application and I didn't hear for a bit. And I thought, well, maybe he had somebody else in mind, and maybe I know that they were looking for someone who had pretty strong fisheries background, which I do not have. I'm an angler. I have been my whole life. But in terms of the complications of our river systems here and what's all going on with them.
Yeah,
and,
I wouldn't.
Yeah, the temperatures and the flooding issues and like just protecting trout because it's one of our greatest resources. So I didn't really have that going in. So I thought maybe it just wasn't going to happen. Well, then I got a call from his assistant and said he'd like to talk with you. We had a fantastic conversation. Like, I was so impressed with him just in the fact that he's a hunter as well, asked great questions, asked what I cared about. And
who was that? The chairman, you said?
No, the governor.
Oh, the governor.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And then I got offered the position. And so that was end of the summer, early fall.
Was that Gianforte?
Yep.
Okay.
And got offered it and started up. I actually missed the first commissioner meeting. Great way to start, Jan. But I missed because I had a veteran hunt. I think I was hunting with Jonathan Blank.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the vet hunt. Either that or Romache. I do a lot. I get them all confused when I've done them. But anyway, and then got thrown into the fire of the commission, actually. And it was actually a fantastic learning experience because it's just so funny. You know how social media is, no one's ever happy with what the commissioner does. It's a very, very thankless job. Lot of hours reading, subjects in and out. Between the 7 commissioners, I really loved all 7 all other 6 commissioners, but we all come from way different backgrounds. One's from, like Leslie, the chairman of the board. She's amazing. She's a rancher, so she comes from the ranching perspective and hunting perspective. But all of us kind of have a little bit different position in life of what our life's about.
Do they all hunt? Those other 6?
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anyone. Yeah. They all of them.
I just wasn't sure if if there was 1 or 2 that were completely against hunting maybe.
Yeah, no. Mm-hmm. No, and you have to admit, like, the governor's going to pick people who he thinks aligns with what he wants to see Montana happen, And there's always people jump on there, he's trying to privatize all of Montana. That's not true.
Does that commission change out with the governor, like the next governor that gets elected? So you could have big swings in policy and...
For sure. Yeah. They are going to strategically place who... is along their political lines for sure. But they're all staggered as well. So that's one thing of the reason why it made it easier to move to Montana. When he appointed me, I got short-termed. It was like 16 months or 14 months or whatever it was.
Prison sentence.
Yes, exactly. My prison sentence was up this January 1st. And so I called the governor's office and I said, look, I'm thinking about moving. And before you re-up me for another term, is it best to say, okay, I'm done on the 1st and you look for someone else to replace me? Or do you want me to just let you know how it goes? Well, it's probably a good thing because my house sold right away. And, we came home. I came home in February after Expo and was like, okay, you have an offer on your house, but you have to be out in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it worked out well. And so my term was short, but it was really eye-opening and a really great experience. And like I was mentioning with social media, you go on there and you read every decision they make or everything they concluded. There's always the naysayers and the haters and they're bashing this and they're bashing that. And for a fact, they don't really understand the complexities of what was just voted on, or we did that because of this, or it's just that was the one thing about it that was really hard for me because I'm a right fighter. I want to get on there and like have my fingers go crazy and
respond
like,
to
you're
the
so
comments.
wrong, you're so wrong, and it was really hard to just chill out and let people say what they want to say and be negative. Most of those people, did you go? Because you can come to every commissioner meeting. Did you sit in, or have you, gone and attended a CAC meeting, which is your local region's Citizens Advisory Council? Because those are open to the public. And it's always like, I don't have time. I work. Oh, yeah, well, so do we,
Right.
But
I think it's so similar to like serving on a local school board. And we were just at a school board meeting last week because our school board, there was a group of teachers that were wanting to put in books in a curriculum. And this is, this stuff comes from California and New York and these places. And then it slowly filters its way here. And now it's here. And there's these books that, have an agenda behind them. And like the one book has the word fuck in it 89 times, and it's like, I don't, whatever, use that word, whatever. It doesn't, but like in school for our kids and out of respect to parents and however they parent, like, I think we can find other books.
Yeah.
There's millions of books out there.
Right.
Right. And it was kind of my thing is there was a bunch of parents down there. I was actually there for a different reason. It was more for an athletics coaching thing, just wanting to watch and see what happened. Nothing came of that. But then there was this other thing. There was a ton of parents there. And every board meeting I've ever been to, which is about 4 in my life, there's this agenda that's a mile long. Mm-hmm. And initially, usually some of these topics are kind of right off the bat. And by the time, like maybe 5 or 6 items down. Well, usually by the time they get to those, we're already 2 hours in, hour and a half in. And we get through those topics and 30 people get up and leave and the school board's left there. And you look at that agenda and you realize those board members are going to be there till 2 a.m.
Yep.
And literally a lot of times they're there well after midnight. And then they talk about all these different committees, like, hey, we had a curriculum committee, and we had a freaking athletics committee, and we got a committee and some of that is they do to themselves. You don't need to form a freaking committee for everything we're talking about here. Make your arguments, discuss it, have a vote, move on. Yeah. Right? Like, you don't need to make all these committees, and there's a few of these gals in there that just want to like sit and talk everything to death. But point is, as even when I disagree with them, I sit there and think, oh my God, I'm glad I'm not on this school board. Like, those poor people, and thank God there are people that are willing to dedicate that much time. And again, it can be, in your county commissioners or your city representatives, and, it's, and really we as community members, whether you're in your community or like in the hunting space or whatever, we should all be going to those meetings, but we don't. Mm-hmm. Like I've never been to a commission meeting. I don't even know when they are. I don't know how to go, where they're at. Like, and really with the business that I'm in, I should be paying more attention to that stuff.
Well, it's hard.
Should be more educated on it, but
it's hard to keep up with it all. It is. And like you said, you have kids right now and that's a focus of yours, and, going to school board meetings and such. And, with the commissioner meetings or the CAC meetings, it is hard to keep up with it all. And not only that, there's every single species has individual issues going on and topics. And, here in Montana, we're loaded with predators, bears, mountain lions, wolves, and that in and itself is a complicated issue. And yeah, it's heavy. There's a lot going on there. And I have to tell you, though, ever since I've been in Utah, and I know there's a lot of wolf issues going on around, I have to sit back and kind of giggle and be like, oh, I'm so glad it's not me right now.
Yeah, no shit.
Just selfishly.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
What do you think, having seen the commission and been through there and whatnot, what do you see happening with like grizzly bears and wolves and stuff in Montana, the predator management? Because it's interesting because you do have people arguing that like, oh, these predators aren't really having an effect on the ungulates. And I mean, I've lived here my whole life and I've hunted certain areas my whole life. And I've seen like during this time period, there were elk everywhere in these areas. And now there's like no elk.
Yeah.
And a lot of the elk have been pushed down or pushed out. What do you think our state's stance is, and what do you think is going to happen with some of that? Like even the delisting of grizzly bears and starting to hunt grizzly bears.
Yeah, that's a huge, huge topic right now across the whole entire West. I personally would love to see a grizzly season. Strictly because I think it needs to exist. I mean, I hunted over near the Augusta area. I haven't for about 5 years now, but the last time I was there and on a 10-day hunt, we filmed 11 different grizzly bears.
Yeah.
They are well above carrying capacity of the land. In our state, in Wyoming, they're, really moving over into Idaho. It's flat and simple. It's a political issue at this stage of the game.
Right.
Their numbers are where they should be. They're recovered. It's an easy propaganda tool for the anti-hunters, just like the wolf is. There's no arguing. These are amazing predators. They're beautiful.
Yeah, they're cool. I mean,
my gosh. I've seen tons of wolves in the wild. I've seen 6 or 7 different mountain lions when I have not been on a mountain lion hunt. I've seen grizzlies I filmed here in Frenchtown. You can go on right now to CarbonTV. It's free. It's like YouTube, and go watch grizzlies mating on my show for 7 hours. I mean, it's not a 7-hour show, but I boiled it down to like 15 minutes. But we sat up in the canyon and filmed mating grizzlies right outside Missoula for 7 hours. It was one of the coolest days I have ever had. But it was a reminder like, oh, I probably should be packing both spray and handgun on my hips, because I never even think of that area as being grizzly central, like the Rocky Mountain front. But,
no, you don't. And my director of operations came in Monday, and Andrew, and he was like, asked him about his weekend. Oh, he's like, I went black bear hunting up in this spot. And he's like, check out this skull. And he just had a picture of it, and he pulled it up, and it's a giant bear skull. It's big.
that he found?
Yeah, and old one. And, it's hard for me to get a sense of the size, but he was saying, like, this thing's huge. Like, not your typical black bear skull. He's like, that's a huge black bear skull. And I was like, well, there's a good chance it's a grizzly bear skull. And he's like, well, I was up, I'm not going to give out his spot, but right on the edge of Missoula. And he's like, yeah, I don't think there's any grizzly bears up there. I was like, oh, hang on a second. And I texted my buddy who 2 miles from there, right, just down the mountain, like you hike down the mountain 2 miles, go over one little knob, and you're into this little drainage where this ranch is. I texted him, asked him for these pictures, and he sent them back, and I'll show you, right? I'll show you as I'm explaining it. But he pulls up, I get this text, and this sow and 2 cubs he's got on film, on camera, on game cam, and this sow like ripped the door off their cabin and ransacked this cabin on their ranch.
Yeah.
And there's these grizzly bears, they're freaking everywhere around here. And there were never really grizzly bears right here. Look at the size of this bear. We'll have to put this up, Henry, on the podcast so they can see it. She's a big ass bear.
Oh yeah.
And
those are big cubs.
And that is that's like, I want to say 3 miles from Target. Missoula.
Yeah.
Like, and then even like the bears down the Bitterroot, I remember game warden stopped me. I watched a grizzly bear 10 years ago up like behind Blue Mountain. And I actually got stopped by a game warden coming out, and he was like, just asking me how my hunt was, and he asked to check my tags, the typical stuff. And then I said, yeah, I watched a beautiful grizzly bear for a long time. He's like, well, there's no bears south of the interstate. Like, there's no grizzly bears down here. And I was like, it was a grizzly bear. In fact, there was a black bear about a mile away on a different knob I was watching as well. And we kind of sat and argued about it, and I'm like, I grew up in Lincoln, and I've seen, like, out on that Rocky Mountain front, like Sun River Game Range area, all that around Augusta, I've seen grizzly bears. I'm like, I watched this bear for hours. This was a full-on grizzly bear. And now they actually have photos of grizzly bears right down, around town in Lolo and Florence and those areas. So.
Yeah, wasn't it was last year or the year before that they, on trail camera, had 2 siblings, like 2 or 2-year-olds, and on the MPG ranch, caught them on trail cam. A lot of people called in that they spotted them on the highway. Well, they decided they were probably going to get into trouble, and so I don't know if it was Jamie Jonkel, the bear biologist, but they trapped them. And the really cool thing is they released those cubs. They weren't cub. When people say cub, you think little itty bitty. No, they were pretty big. But they released those bears on different days in completely different areas, collared, and they watched them go in different directions. And this was told to me, I think, by Liz, one of the biologists, but that they actually 3 weeks later joined up again.
Yeah.
So how cool is that? Like, bears are amazing. I'm bear obsessed. I love hunting them, but I love their unique nature.
They're incredible.
They are. They're just amazing. And their noses are, I say, 200 times stronger than the human nose. I don't know if those siblings smelled each other, or was it something like just, who knows? Who knows? Like salmon, right? Swimming up the river to where they were hatched.
Right.
Like if they just connected back again, it's just so cool. But yeah, no, as far as grizzlies in the Bitterroot, they're here. I've filmed them. You can watch mating grizzlies, right here in Frenchtown on my show. I've had encounters. They caught and trapped one, I think, on the golf course in Stevensville recently in the last couple of years. But yeah, they're
and for the record, like, I'm all for them being around. Like, I'm all for having some grizzly bears around.
Me too.
But there has to be a bit of a limit on these bears, because they are more territorial than actually on the podcast the other night, Brooke Bartleson was talking about like the brown bears that she's giving tours for up in Alaska. And
photographing,
she said, those bears are communal. I mean, they have dozens, if not, dozens and dozens of brown bears in like one tiny area on a beach all together. Right. Male, female, the whole 9 yards. And she said those bears just don't get real worked up about each other because they have tons of food. Yep. Their food source is plentiful. They live together. It's no problem. Now, inland grizzly bears and the grizzly bears that we have to be more territorial because the fight for food is a whole different ballgame here. Like a bear comes out of a den, it could be weeks, if not potentially months, before they ever actually eat any kind of meat. If they're not successful killing some. If it's a young cub coming out of a den, they're grazing, they're eating grass and plants and stuff like that. Later in the summer, berries, and they're opportunistic, trying to take down an old animal or find something that's dead. But they have to be more territorial because if you're fighting for food, you don't want anything in your area potentially eating that meal. Right. And so what's happening is those bears in the Bob Marshall Wilderness have gotten so thick that they've begun to spread out. And now they are in Frenchtown and down the Bitterroot, and they're just going to continue to spread.
It's such a political issue. It's going to take a lot, anything once it's on the list, so hard to get it off. But I believe we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
I think that Montana, Wyoming, I think that they are looking ahead. It's a chess game, to be quite honest. Looking ahead at what they need to do to get them off the list.
Yeah.
And it's not because we bloodthirsty hunters want to punch our tag. It's because of management. It just, once they become over, like wolves, over a certain number, they simply need to be managed. There's too much human conflict interaction with them. And, just like the lady who just got killed in Ovando, of the biker.
Yeah.
It's a rare situation.
Right behind the museum downtown.
It's a rare situation that happens, but it does, and it's going to happen more and more and more.
Right.
And so really it's just, in my opinion, a management issue. And I believe we're headed in the right direction. The sad thing about it is it's used as for the anti-hunting people. It's used as propaganda, just like the wolf. All this misinformation out there. Like I just drove by the billboard on the way here, the wolf billboard,
yes.
Killing them
right across the highway from ours.
Everything suffers, or whatever it says. And that is such...
I want to put another billboard up on the next one down that people can see from the interstate that says Montana Knife Company, the best knife to use for skinning wolves. 100%. I'm waiting for that billboard to come open.
I think you should.
Just so people see it, and then the next billboard is that one. I think it'd be beautiful.
And I try really hard to understand other people's perspectives, and it's funny with the wolf issue, all these Hollywoodites hopping on the bandwagon of Montana's about to kill all of its Yellowstone wolves. I saw that come out last year, and I thought a lot of famous people. And number one, what do you personally know about wolves? Have you seen them hamstring elk? I have the video.
Right.
I've seen them chomping, deer fawns. And I mean, the noses of a bear and a wolf, black bear, it's easy pickings for them, especially wolves in the snow. Let's just that in and of itself.
And then even like in calving season, last year, right about now, I was hiking, bear hunting, just north of town here, like a mile. And I got into an elk calving ground. I was just hiking along, and all of a sudden I see these cow elk, and then I see all their little calves. And I mean, these calves most of them are probably less than 24 hours old, tiny little things.
Yeah.
And I literally could have run down and caught them myself. I mean, they were wobbly legged. They're in thick timber. I mean, clumsy. 2 or 3 days later, those suckers can really move.
Yep.
But at that moment, and so I backed out. I didn't want to bother them. I didn't want to bother the cows. I watched them for a little bit. And the cows were trying to kind of move them. I had just bumped them a little. Mm-hmm. But the cows were trying to move them, but those little babies couldn't even hardly get through the brush, in the timber. And all I could think is if I was a pack of wolves or even one bear, if I was one bear, I'd for sure go eat at least 2 or 3 of those things right now. Yep. But if I'm a pack of wolves, I might kill almost all of them.
Oh yeah. And both wolves, it's easy pickings, you know. I think one wolf alone, could take down most ungulates, and then to hunt his packs. And what people don't really realize is, or think about, take that elk herd, that cow elk is having one baby a year, if that pack is having a pack. That pack of wolves is having a litter.
Right.
And that litter in a year.
Depending on the area, maybe 2 litters.
Yeah. And that litter is having a litter.
Right.
And that litter, it's kind of like, would you throw a handful of piranhas into your kid's fish tank and expect the fish to survive? it's all about balance, and it to me, it's so frustrating when I see billboards like that or just misinformation put out there. And hey, maybe it's well intended. They don't understand, or they have different perspectives than we do, but you just hope that the decision makers understand wildlife management, understand, the science behind what a pack could do or what a bear does. And like back on black bears and grizzlies, in the spring when the deer and the elk are having their calves and their fawns, the moms tuck them away and then they go feed. And a bear can smell, they say, 200 times better than a human. You know how easy pickings it is for bears to peg off those elk calves? Right, so easy. In Wisconsin, back in the day, this is back probably 20 years ago already, they started in the Clam Lake area, they started an elk herd in Wisconsin. And that elk herd dwindled away to almost nothing because of the black bears in Wisconsin. And now it's they've gotten that population up enough they actually have a small elk hunt in Wisconsin, which is great to see. But yeah, predators play a huge role. And I just hope, back to the grizzly topic, that in the years to come, we are able to manage them per state. Yeah.
And I don't think I haven't heard any hunters, anybody advocating for like an open season on grizzly bears, for months and taking out however many, if say the Bob Marshall Wilderness area alone, like even if you didn't say hunt them down the Bitterroot, they're not necessarily thick down the Bitterroot yet, or certain areas, but like let's just take that area where we know they're overpopulated and causing issues with humans. And let's say we are going to allow 4 tags, for example, just to start.
Right.
If you did that in a lottery system where people could buy chances for $5 a piece, the amount of money that would be raised, and again, it wouldn't turn into a rich man sport. This isn't a Western Hunt Expo auction, and you're letting one rich guy kill a grizzly bear in the hometown of all these people that have had to deal with them for decades.
Right.
You're truly allowing everyone and to me, I would make it just resident in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Let Montana residents buy lottery chances, as many as they want, and you're going to have some guys that are going to spend maybe $25,000, $30,000 in chances and may still lose to the guy that bought one chance. But buy $5 chances and then have a plan and take all that money, for the people who aren't really in support of a grizzly bear hunt, to put back into grizzly bear management or habitat stuff for them or whatever you want to do. Because again, I'm all for that kind of stuff, because if that helps the grizzly bear keep going, then next year we're going to have 6 tags or 10 or 12,
Right. No, I 100% agree.
And down the road, maybe you could start letting, and this is just my ideas, like who cares if they want to let non-residents or whatever they want to do. But the point is they would raise millions of dollars for one hunt to take out 3 or 4 bears in a huge area. And quite frankly, I don't know if everyone would even be successful. I mean, it's rough country back there. They're not easy necessarily to find, especially if you're looking for like a big boar. Mm-hmm. You might not even take out the 3 or 4 if only one person has a tag. Mm-hmm. If you open up a quota, for sure they're going to take 4 or 5 bears by the time they realize it. But it's a hot topic, and it's something that if you took out 4 bears, it wouldn't even touch the population.
Oh
back there.
No, not at all.
It wouldn't actually cure the actual real issue of kind of thinning that bear population down, but it would be a start for hunters.
Yeah, and it's funny. It affects a lot of other hunts as well that people might not realize, and I didn't even until really being on the commission, is that if grizzlies stay on the list, the antis who are trying to stop all of our other forms of hunting and trapping. I'm not a trapper, never have been, but I support trapping. I understand that it's necessary, whether it's, too many raccoons or it's coyotes or wolves to help manage wolves.
It's the most effective way to manage wolves.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, unless you're Kate Small. They're amazing. I love her.
And she's trapping.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's doing both.
Oh, she does. I think she does both.
She does both. Yeah, but they were originally hunting them, and then they started trapping them.
Yeah.
And she's fallen in love with that.
Yeah. So the grizzly issue being them on the list, it's affecting other things because the anti-hunters are using that tool to say, oh, you can't trap in this area, let's say this region, because you're in grizzly recovery zones
Right.
or lynx recovery zone. And there could be incidental catch. And even if or the hounds issue, we finally got hound hunting here, right? Whether you're for or against, it's rare that we actually get a win for hunters.
Right.
So there's certain areas now you can hunt hounds, whether you agree with it or not. That's the way they voted before I was on the commission. But that's even used against the houndsmen. Oh, you can't release your dogs in this area because there's grizzlies here.
Right.
And they consider it a catch, even if you, trust me, no houndsman wants to release their hounds on a grizz. But let's say they spout off on the smell, release the hounds, they chase a grizz, that's considered a take, which legally is BS, but it is. And so the grizzly issue isn't just about grizzlies. It's about controlling a lot of other forms of our lifestyle.
Right. No, I completely agree. Yeah. Well, anyway, we could go on for hours on that topic, but I do want to get more kind of go back to Wisconsin and how you got into hunting and how you ultimately got to having your own TV show, you know, like this path. Cause I think, and you're one that really did it early. Like we're seeing a lot more women get into hunting, which is fantastic. There's a lot more women online these days hunting, and there's a lot of really badass women doing it these days. Not just like the quote unquote influencer that's taking fake pictures, but like, you know, and I've had a few on the podcast like Kate Small, you know, it's really cool. You know, Jessica Byers, you know, she's a great hunter, you know, amazing hunter and really educated on what she's doing and can get after it. But, how did you get into hunting? Was it as a kid with your dad? Or?
Yep. My dad, I was a total, I don't know, can I say this today's day? I was a total tomboy. Thank God growing up in the 70s.
Tomboy was your pronoun?
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And
you can say whatever you want on here.
Okay, good. But no, I just, you know, I have one older sister. She's 2.5 years older than I am. And of course, I'm sure my dad really wanted a boy. I mean, they only wanted 2 kids, and instead he got me. And the joke, I can't even joke about this anymore in the culture that we live in, but the joke has always been my whole life. He wanted a boy, didn't get one, so he turned me into one.
Yeah.
You know, well, now you can't even say that because what does that imply? But he really did. He really noticed in me.
You're one of the prettiest boys I've ever known.
Well, they are though. You know, I mean, I've never felt more unattractive as on a vacation. I went to the Keys with my girlfriends, and there were all these dudes around us that were 10 times prettier than we were. But anyway, my dad just noticed in me this innate love of nature, and I was always outside. And my sister was kind of a bookworm, you know, in her room, super cerebral and smart, and always reading or doing something inside. And I was always outside in the mud catching frogs and just a real nature kid. And my dad, we always joked about when I was finally old enough to walk the pheasant fields of Wisconsin with him, he'd let me tag along. And that's really how it started. It really was just being his little shadow in the duck blinds, pheasant hunting. And then he was smart enough to sign me up for hunter safety, you know, back in 1983. I think I still have my little card. You can do the math. But, you know, back in those days, I mean, there weren't girls in hunter safety, you know, and he was smart enough to like say, yeah, go for it. And never, ever made me feel, I never even honestly conceptualized that I'm a girl where I shouldn't be.
Right.
No, I was just tomboy. It just felt always natural. And then we started road tripping it from Wisconsin to South Dakota when I was in junior high, and we would do pheasant hunts, and I was the designated bird gutter and loved it. And my dad always jokes that it started from there, that Jana doesn't field dress her game or birds or animals. She autopsies them. Because think about being this little 6th grader and being able to like look inside a pheasant and seeing its gizzard and its little heart. And like, I thought, like, that's why Laura, Zara, and I probably connected. We both think it's all fascinating stuff, you know? And
that sounds like Demi, my daughter, when she was 15 and got her mule deer, and she was in a Health Science Academy in school, and they were doing a lot of, you know, body stuff. And when we took the heart out of the mule deer, she sat there on the mountain. I still have a video on my phone today of it. And she's sitting there and she's showing me the ventricles and where they all go and what they connect to. And when she shot her last one, when I cut it out, I like cut it off the lungs and I cut the top of the heart off. And she was like pissed that like, she's like, you cut the top off? I wanted to like look at this and that and whatnot. So it sounds very familiar to how she was doing it.
Well, think about it. Wouldn't it be such a beautiful thing if all kids got to experience this? I mean, what hunting does from a mental and emotional perspective and a confidence builder and I can do this. And it's just, we could go just down this long road of what I think is missing in our youth and could be so easily delivered through hunting and fishing.
Yeah.
But that's how I got into it. And then when I was in high school, my high school boyfriend, he bought a bow and I would sit in the trees with him. And it's so funny because, jumping from bird hunting to big game hunting is a big jump. And I didn't even really have the interest in high school to start bow hunting. It wasn't until I was a freshman in college. My dad had just started bow hunting a couple years before that. And I went to college just 15 minutes from where I grew up, Whitewater, Wisconsin. And he called me up one day and he said, hey, I stuck a buck last night, but I can't find him. Do you want to come help me look? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm skipping class. So I went back, met up with my dad, took me to the tree stand. And this was just down the road. I lived in the country. It was right on the backside of a cemetery, actually. And he showed me a stand. He showed me where he shot. And he had gotten a doe or two before then, but never a buck. And so we go, and this is so funny. I love telling people this story. He actually used one of those gimmicky tracker strings. Do you remember those from
No.
oh, dude, it was so this is 1989 or 90. And it was this spool that goes where your stabilizer does, and it attaches to your arrow and it spools out for 40 yards, and it shows you the direction. And my dad's always been, I'll try that. He's always been gimmicky.
Yeah.
So he had this spool, and I went to the stand, and there you could see the little string going through the trees into the corn, but it spools out after 40 or 50 yards, So yes, it gives you, I guess, a start point, but it was so stupid. But I just laugh about that now. But so we got on the deer's tracks and it went into the corn. He showed me where he tracked it up to last night. And so we kind of split off, and I was, looking for blood on the dirt and the stalks. And I ended up splitting off from him, seeing this track, and it looked like it was kind of started to stumble. And I looked in between the row, and then I'd look in the next row, and I look in the next row, and there's its white belly looking back at me. And I just remember screaming, Dad, 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 I got him. And my dad, who is just this chill 6'2" dude, big, strong, athletic guy, comes over to me, and he was literally jumping up and down. I've never seen my dad so excited. And weeks later, I heard him telling the story to people, and he equated the excitement of finding that buck to the birth of his two daughters. Yeah. No joke. So I literally, it was a moment for me, I want that. I want to know. I was just as excited as he was, but I wanted to know.
It made a big impression on you.
Yeah, huge. And then along that same period of time in college, I was at one of my roommate's friend's house, and she was a bow hunter. And I said to her, this is going to sound so dumb. Now, mind you, this is way back in the day. But I remember saying to her, I really can't even pull my boyfriend's bow back. And she said, well, duh, you got to get it fitted for you. You got to get it toned down.
Right.
They'll tune down to 30 pounds if you need to start there, And I'm like, oh, really? So that was another moment where it's if she could do it, I could do it, because we were about the same stature and what the hell. So I went to this bow shop outside of Milwaukee. They fitted me with a Darton Jr. Literally, it was my first bow, Darton Jr. I was 19. It probably was pulling 25 pounds, literally nothing.
Yeah.
But I got my poundage up there, got my arrows and some broadheads, and the next year shot a doe, and that was 30 some years ago. And so that was the start of how I got into bow hunting. And it's funny because now I hunt bow hunting, I hunt pistol, I hunt rifle, muzzleloader, everything. But I started out basically big game archery hunting by far. I didn't pick up a rifle for probably another 10 years.
Really?
And then I didn't start long range training until I moved out west here to Montana. But how I started the show, back to your question, really is, so I went through a divorce in Wisconsin, lived with my mom. If you can't see me right now, I've got holding up a big L on my forehead. Lived with my mom in my mom's basement, and trying to just figure out what to do with my life. I had worked for Edward Jones Investments for 10 years, and just knew that.
Super exciting job.
Oh, yeah, it was amazing.
Looking at numbers and stuff.
Yeah, and I'm just not an office gal. Even before that, though, I was in outside sales. I was playing the office gig. I worked in radio sales. I worked for my dad's company that created circuit boards, outside sales for that. So I was in sort of corporate world, always not feeling like I belonged in corporate world, And shout out to my ex though. Like Bruce is a great guy. He's a broker for Jones, and just we still have a great relationship. He gave me the opportunity to be a stepmom, so I was never able to have kids, and so like that chapter in my life, I don't regret it all. I love every step that has gotten me to the path I'm on right now, but I knew that I didn't really want to go back into the corporate world, and I was starting to write. I started to write for some hunting magazine. I was in Bowhunter magazine. I started to write for womenhunters.com, and at that time was the leading women's site. I don't even know if it still exists, but I mean, people have to remember, you got to back up a bit here. I'm talking the beginning of the internet.
Yeah, exactly. It is funny because I tell my kids, like, I'm older than the internet. I've been making knives longer than the internet was around.
Yeah.
Had I only known how important the internet was going to be, I would have harnessed that way earlier on.
Right.
Figured some shit out.
Yeah, I saw a meme the other day. It made me laugh. It said, remember when we grew up, good old days when you lied to your parents, you were sleeping over at a friend's house, but you were really out in the field getting blasted and you didn't have a cell phone to prove it. Like, those were the good old days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There'll be a time when we're like, 95 years old, and our great grandchildren are gonna be like, my great grandpa's older than the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be a thing.
You're old. I have photos of bucks I've killed that are Polaroids. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
Polaroids. Or like one of my biggest bucks I ever killed was this beautiful, big, tall, we called it the giraffe buck because it had a really skinny neck. It wasn't the rut yet. And the pictures I have of that buck are from one of those little disposable. You like wound it up, dropped it off at the, 24 hours was a big deal. Dropped it off.
Those were always the cameras, like, you never really wanted your parents to go develop those because like it had your like friend maybe gotten a hold of it. Like you never know what kind of evidence is going to be on there. Or you find one like a year later and you're like, oh shit, I wonder what's on here. That? And you develop it and you're like, oh my God.
Exactly. Those good old days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I started, I was in Bowhunter magazine and my ex-boyfriend reached out on Facebook and said, what issue are you in? Because I had just sold an article called Independence Day. So the funny thing about me in hunting tree stands in Wisconsin is I am deathly afraid of heights. Like, you should see me. I've got like 2 harnesses on, 6 straps to the tree, like deathly afraid. And I was always super afraid to get a climber tree stand because I'm like, what if the bottom falls out? Like,
right.
And my nickname is Sherman, as in Sherman tank, because I plow through everything and don't think about things. And literally I'm like, I'm going to Shermanate this thing and I'm going to wind up dead. But I finally got the courage because my dad wasn't always around to help me move the tree stands at our cabin. And so I got a climber tree stand. I wrote an article. I killed my biggest buck ever because of it and called the article Independence Day. And anyway, my ex-boyfriend saw that article. We got to talking. He lived in Montana, which is why I moved out here. So I didn't move out here with the intent of starting the show, but he was a producer, produced a different hunting show, wanted to kind of break off from them and said, let's start our own. I'm like, okay. Like, it really was crazy. It was without a ton of thought. Like, it wasn't like this, like you had this vision and this goal and this dream, and now we're sitting in the most beautiful knife shop in the country. I was like, we'll go for it. Let's see, like I really didn't even have a plan or a goal. I just knew as we were spitballing the ideas and what to call it, and we called it Skull Bound because of my skull art. I was doing that before I moved out here, and just, I wanted to show that we're animal lovers and that we love the planet. We love animals. I just want to show that. So we did a couple of hunts. We went to Africa, which is obviously an amazing experience, but you can gather so much footage there, right?
Right.
I mean, I arrowed an eland bull and a hartebeest and an ostrich and all these crazy things. Cooked them up there while we were there, just showed a bunch of cool stuff like that. Did a couple turkey hunts, did a whitetail hunt, and had enough footage, put together a pilot, and we went straight to the Sportsman's Channel. And we said, this is our show idea. This is what it's going to look like. I think we had a 7-minute pilot. We want to show conservation. And right away, they were like, we want it. And they worked with us in terms of, it wasn't an original, but it was, like, people don't understand the business model of like a Sportsman's Channel. You pay for that airtime. And it's very negotiable whether how many minutes of commercial time you want, or do you want a lower price and you give all the minutes to them, and then you sell commercial time, 30 minutes, 15-second spots, billboards on your show, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So they worked really great with us because there really weren't any solo female hosted shows. We weren't the average couple show, and so Yeah, 9 years. And so I was in my mind, I remember thinking like, yeah, we'll see how long it goes. The average TV show on network back in the day, 13, 14 years ago, was 3 years tops.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah, we'll do it for a few years and then just figure out after that. And 9 years later, it was on the Sportsman's Channel for 9 years. And then during that 9th year, which was 5 years ago, I was really getting kind of, because some of my partners were like kind of wanting to get away from TV. Not all of them, but some were like, what about a YouTube channel? How about digital? And that was really a scary jump for me because I saw all these people getting canceled on YouTube.
Yeah.
I saw my friends' gun shows getting taken down, anything gun, ammo, predator related. And I've always been a huge predator hunter since I moved out here. I didn't want to all of a sudden put all my eggs in one basket and get canceled.
Yeah. And you're not necessarily in control when you have your show on the Outdoor Channel, but you kind of are, because you actually know the people to go talk to.
Yes.
But when your show is on the internet, on YouTube or Instagram or whatever that is, on the internet somewhere, you don't know the people. There is nobody you can call and be like, hey, we need to talk about this. At least on the TV show, there's a couple producers or an executive producer or whoever, like, and I would imagine at the Outdoor Channel, you can go all the way to the top if you need to get a hold of somebody.
Easily, yeah.
Discuss like, okay, well, if you didn't like that content, like, let's figure this out and what do you want? Right. But you can't do that on YouTube. You're just
YouTube
gone.
Doesn't care. No. Or they give you a big red, circle label of,
or they don't take it down, but they just shadow ban it to the point where
no one can
it might as well
find
be down.
Exactly.
No one's going to see it.
So that's why I just chose to go to CarbonTV. It is owned by hunters. It is pro hunting, pro trapping, pro lifestyle, everything we are all about. And I knew I would never get shut down from that. So in year 9 of Skull Bound, same year as breaking up with the ex, who was really hard for me because we were a 2-man band, literally a 2-man band.
Was he doing most of the filming?
All of it, all of the filming. I'd never used, except a couple of different times I had to hire a extra cameraman when he couldn't do it, had some other commitment. But yeah, cameraman, editor, everything. So to me, it was really like, what do I do? Like when we broke up, I didn't know if I would continue on. And in my mind's eye, it was a really big struggle for a while because I didn't know if I'd want to, I'm single female going out and, hunting with weird cameramen I didn't know, or like, what it's like to travel with strangers, like
traveling and camping and the whole thing.
Yeah. So luckily, little did I know it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But but that's it's a really great kind of metaphor for life. I really believe that we only grow through the shit times, through the tough times of the challenges and stuff that really pushes us to think and really pushes us to grow and change and learn. And little did I know that literally, not just career-wise, but my entire life, would really go a different direction, same direction, but just blossom in a lot of different ways. So anyway, year 9, I was on Sportsman's, and then I went on Carbon. And the first season, we called it Skull Bound Chronicles, just to differentiate a little bit, something different from Network. And we just put the highlights of the previous 9 years on the first season of Skull Bound Chronicles. And it did so well, numbers matched Network, that I just jumped full time. And the nice thing about digital now is it's free. CarbonTV is always free, never will charge people to watch. It's shareable. It's up there forever. And versus when you're on network TV, and I have to say, Sportsman's Channel was great to me. Like everyone says, oh, I bet you were so happy. No, they were great. I loved I loved everyone I worked with. Monty, Jake, they were great. But from a business perspective, it was just time to go digital for me. Super easier. I can put out a 5-minute or a 10-minute episode. How to can bear meat. That's an episode I did in season 3. How to can bear meat, because I'm just such a bear freak. Or I can go, sturgeon fishing and put a 10-minute reel up, or I can do a 30-minute sheep hunt. I can do whatever I wanted. My commitment to my partners is so many episodes, and this is how many you'll be in, that kind of thing. But it's just so much easier and way more fun for my now business partner, Heath Helgert, H2O Productions. He lives right here in the Bitterroot. He's amazing. And he has a lot of more creative fun with my show because he can do anything. And there are some times where I just go self-film, warning label on those. It's not the best production in the world. I'm not a camera person at all. I'm such a techie idiot, but they're kind of fun because
I think people though
don't expect cinematography.
No offense to Henry here, but like sometimes we do see like the professionally shot, professionally edited stuff and whatnot. And a lot of times that's amazing, but I do think there are a lot of people that still like to just see a real, like, selfie style cell phone video, not edited, like clearly could be a little higher quality, sound isn't perfect, but you really can see that it's truly just that person and they're just in that moment. Right. And even like with you out doing your stuff, like it kind of shows that occasionally, like, oh, she's not out there with a huge team and a huge production, and maybe she is just out in the field by herself with her phone doing her best trying to capture it.
Yeah, all the time, especially in the last couple of years. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's more relatable to people too, like you said, cell phone stuff, GoPro stuff, I think those do just as good as all my other shows,
Yeah, for somebody trying, maybe another young boy or girl, thinking about trying to kind of follow in your footsteps, start their own show. I mean, let's face it, any young kid that hunts, it seems like, the ultimate dream job is to have your own little hunting show and go travel the world and hunt, right?
Yeah.
But it does show to them that's possible. They can just do it with their own camera and learn some editing skills, and that it is possible. It doesn't take a big team of people to make that happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I get that probably on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm.
How did you start? How do I do it? And really, to me, most of my advice to people who want their own hunting show or want to kind of do what I do is just, first of all, you got to have what makes you stand out, because
right.
It really is a dream job. And trust me, I came from, 20 years of not having the dream job. It is a dream job. I do love it. It's a lot more work than people understand, the business of it all.
Yep.
And that's constantly changing, kind of like social media, right? It's constantly changing. The algorithms change. We don't have a whole lot of control over that.
It's a lot busier area too. Like when you started, you really are a pioneer in a lot of this stuff where, when you started, like when Dudley started, people like that, you were really leaders in all of this stuff, breaking a lot of ground. But today, if you're a young kid, it's no different than a podcast. Like starting a podcast today versus 5 and 10 years ago, you definitely had a bit of an advantage back then that wasn't as cluttered of a market. Now it was probably harder to distribute. So like, there's the things right about like the internet. I always say, it might be a busier world today with more competition, but also like when I started making knives, I couldn't put up a post and show 100,000 people what I'm making. You had to buy ads in magazines and go to trade shows. And same thing with your show. Like you had to go to Outdoor Channel and hope that they say yes, because you couldn't just post it online and just show it off. Like when Skull Bound started.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. It is so changed, but I think it's possible for anybody, especially if you've got the passion, if you're doing it for the right reasons. We've all seen the gals out there who aren't. Like, I don't know about you, but I've never hunted in my bikini, but those are slowly fading away. And I'm really tight with all my partners after 14 years. It's almost all the same ones I've had from the beginning. I'm sitting across from you looking at your Nosler hat. They were my first partner. They're amazing people. I love them so much. And it's so nice I work with every company that I love, I use. It's real.
Right.
Nosler's Ammo has just done amazing things for me. And so, yeah, it's the industry and the way people have shows right now is totally different, but it's totally possible. But my thing I ask them is, what's your shtick? Like, what are you teaching people something? Are you going at it from a brand new hunter's perspective? Like, and showing people what it's like to get into the hunting world? Because I think the one benefit that came out of COVID is that, there were people who really started to think about where their food's coming from,
right.
Sustainability. All of a sudden, I mean, never in my life had I gone into the grocery store and there was no meat or no produce or all that. And we hunters weren't that freaked out about it because our freezers are full, always are. I don't know about you, but I dive into the way back and there's like, oh, there's that whitetail from 4 years ago. We've got plenty of meat and fish and birds in our freezers. But it has changed the industry a bit as well in the last, 15 years. But I think it's possible for anybody. I think you've got to have a shtick or something that makes you original. Why would people want to watch you?
Right.
What do you really consciously think? Yes.
You got to also understand that, if you're going to post up a video or a photo or something, like if the first 3 don't go viral, it doesn't mean that it's a failure or that it wasn't even good and shouldn't have gone viral. But it takes, I think that's the one thing is that like a lot of people think that maybe that first video, like even with our podcast, right? Like we're starting out, we're getting it going again. Like, okay, so there's not 80,000 downloads in week one. Like, okay, but consistency, year after year, 5 years later, it's like, oh, wow, I'm getting a lot of downloads. Well, yeah, it's because you week after week after week, you were consistent with it. And I think the same thing with a YouTube hunting channel, being consistent constantly. And, a lot of people, like from an owner of a brand perspective, we get hit up all the time about people wanting us to sponsor what they're doing. And it's a bit of a catch-22, right? It's like that person's brand new and they don't really have a following. So as a brand, you're like, well, we're going to invest dollars in this, but is there anybody watching? No. Okay, well, we're going to wait. But then that person's like, well, we need dollars to be able to hunt and buy camera gear. And so you do have to pay your dues and fight through that. You start to build your following, and now all of a sudden brands start saying, well, we'll sponsor a little here or there or whatever. And I think you can definitely tell, though, like from a brand perspective, certain things I watch, like, okay, nobody's watching this yet and they don't have a lot of followers, but there's something here.
Yeah.
Like,
they've got
we want to
something.
jump on this kind of early,
Yeah.
But the consistency, I think, and that's the other thing, whether you're a full-time custom knife maker or you're making a hunting show, I think a lot of people see what you're doing and even kind of like what I've done, and they just see like the glamorous part of it, the fun, the hunt, whatnot, and they don't see the hours of work, the time it takes working, sponsors, going to shows, networking, fighting for your position in the industry. Like, it's a ton of work.
Oh, it really is. And it's definitely not the part that, most people notice or even think about.
Yeah.
And luckily, again, being older, I kind of had a nest egg like you, or another job where I had money coming in and didn't have to fully depend on, it's like a struggling musician. They typically have another job while they're trying to
playing gigs on the weekend.
Yeah. So that's another thing I say, if this is going to be your income, and that's why you're doing it, I would not recommend doing it.
Yeah. I have people message me and they're like, it's so motivating what you're doing. It's so cool what you're doing. I'm thinking of starting making knives. I've got a forge and I've got this and that. And I think I'm thinking I'm going to quit my job. And I'm just like, hold on a second. Like, I've done this for 30 years. And like when I started MKC, I was doing it at mornings and nights and weekends, and until it got to the point where I literally couldn't do both anymore.
Right.
Then you quit your job.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, you don't just go buy a bunch of camera gear and say, I'm starting Skull Bound 2 tomorrow.
No.
I've never even hunted.
Yeah. It has to be a merger of the two, of like, you want to do it because you love it, but have another way to, we all got to live, have another way to provide and pay your bills, and,
And quite honestly, sometimes you find when people try to do what you're doing or do what I'm doing, they end up finding that, I just enjoy hunting more on my weekends and not making it my business.
Oh, yeah.
And having a job is actually maybe the more enjoyable way to go, because they don't want their hobby to be stressful and to be a business or making knives or
it's like whatever. My friends who own bow shops. They opened up a bow shop because they love archery, and then they're absolutely married to the bow shop.
Yeah.
Or
don't even get to hunt.
Yeah. You love cooking. You open up a restaurant and it's like, holy cow, different ball game.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And there are days where I absolutely love to just go out and hunt by myself. No cameras, no nothing. It's funny that it was almost like, little God moments that year that I was trying to figure it out. The first fall, I killed the 2 biggest bucks I've ever killed, and I was solo hunting.
Yeah.
Like, that was like, okay, God's going like, you got this. Like, whatever happens is supposed to happen. You don't, whether it's career-wise, professionally, or personally, just do what you love, enjoy it. And yeah, it's a different ballgame when you've got a camera having to capture it all and follow you around. And I truly love that all my amazing memories, most of them are captured the last 15 years, but I also love that time I get to go out and not have to worry about that.
Right.
And I look forward to the future, maybe just 3, 4, or 5 years down the road, of being able to go out with John and hunt and chase our adventures and not have to worry about filming.
I think I think it's part of it's because you've done it a long time, and I think it's also just the kind of personality you have, but I think you've done a really good job of doing the kind of quote unquote influencer part of it, or the sponsorship rep part of it, in a really authentic and natural way, because I've been around, I've been like with some, and we're picking on girls a lot of time, but guys do it too. But like girls especially, where makeup and hair's all done or whatever, and like it's just like so posed, everything's so posy. And like when we hunted in Texas together, you did a bunch of documenting there that I was with you. We didn't really hunt together, but we were around camp and stuff, and I didn't realize how much of that footage and content you were even getting while you were doing it. And it wasn't a like, hey guys, pause, we got to get this for a second, and like stopped it all. You got it in the natural flow of everything, and then you were posting after it, and I was like, damn, like I didn't even know she was getting those photos, and it was a lot of it was so natural. I just think the way you've done all that is, you know, I commend you for that, and it's so professional, and I encourage other people, young people, men and women, that are trying to kind of like rep brands and do what they do, but you got to do it in a way that's authentic, that's not, you know, fake.
Well, I sincerely appreciate that. If there's a compliment that just gets me giddy, it's that, because I try really hard to just be me. I'm the worst liar on the planet, first of all. And when I have done things where it's like, oh, I haven't talked about that partner in a long time, I really need to, it always to me looks stupid. Like, you know, like
you forced
all
it.
right, you know, here I am, Vanna White, ding, ding, ding. You know, it just looks staged. And I hate looking staged. Sometimes you have to, right? Or if you're really trying to teach, or like, hey, this sale came on, whatever. You know, I'm here to work for my partners. That's what I do. At the same time, I really appreciate that compliment of it being authentic. The one thing that I did do when I had my split and went on to Skull Bound Chronicles by myself was I got rid of a couple partners that I wasn't fully connected with, that I didn't love the way that they either treated people, other people that I saw, even consumers, because when you represent a brand, a lot of people, if they have a problem with that brand, will come to me, you know, and say, hey, you know, I tried this and I didn't like it, or whatever it is. And then I feel very responsible of like, well, why is this? Or did you know they have a warranty here? Or I'm sorry that broke, or whatever. They come to me. And there were a couple companies I worked with that I didn't like the way that they handled customer service and wasn't truly proud to represent them. And so I lost some money, and it was the best decision I ever made.
Yeah.
I literally work with everybody. I love everybody I work with. There are a couple that I question why they do things, but in general, I'm so lucky to work with who I work with and be friends with them.
Right.
And I realize that of the gratitude I have is immense for the job that I have, and I just want to do a really good job for them. But I hope that it comes off authentically. When people ask me, if you weren't doing Skullbound, what would you be doing? Exactly what I'm doing.
Right.
Like, I'm up here for 2 weeks running my baits in Idaho with Heath, and like I would be doing exactly what I'm doing, whether there was a camera with me or not.
Right.
And I'm really lucky to be able to say that.
So tell me, with the skulls, how did you get into the skull artwork?
It's funny. My dad and I have always not only had the connection of hunting, but he's an artist too, just for fun. Like, he would make us his own birthday cards when we were kids. He's just always he's got a hilarious sense of humor, but a really good artist. And when he retired, he kind of got into painting, just oil painting or acrylic painting. You know, he paints people and animals and everything, cowboy art kind of. And even when I was still living in Wisconsin, we took a painting class together at the old folks home. You know, that was super fun. Once a week we got together and just painted. And so he was on vacation with his wife, Diana, and they took a picture of a painted ram skull in New Mexico. And he said, you ought to do this with all your skulls. And it was just kind of that Native American dot design.
Right.
And I'm like, I could do that. And that's literally how I started. I started painting sort of a Native American style design on some whitetail skulls and bear skulls, and even then buying skulls off eBay, you know, or people giving them to me. I actually had them hanging in my office at my house, and, you know, people say, oh, could you do that for my husband? I want to surprise him. And then I started donating them to conservation groups and going to banquets with my dad. And that's kind of how my skull painting and beading started. Then a friend of mine, Kevin Polson, sent me a picture of this beaded skull, and it was like next level. I mean, this woman, she was an African artist, and she was insane. And her skulls were actually in some gallery in like Colorado, like ski resort stuff, you know, like $20,000 skulls. And I thought, well, I could do that, but not my work's not really intricate like that. Mine's more larger style beads, sometimes arrowheads, you know, just different materials. But that was what got me inspired to start beading them.
Yeah.
For lack of a better, they're not beaded on there, they're glued on, but for lack of a better word. And I had a lot of fun donating those and then doing those for people. And then people started shipping me their skulls. You know, like after you've gotten so many whitetails or so many XYZ critters,
right?
You know, you get a little more creative and maybe you don't want all the head mounts in your house. So I started doing them for people across the country and shipping them back to them. And then when we started Skull Bound, it kind of went berserk because of the show on Sportsman's Channel. But I don't do it as much as I used to right now. Pretty much the only way I do skulls is for conservation groups or maybe a veteran cause here and there because it's so near and dear to me. But
you just had one at the
Hunt Expo.
Yeah, what did it go for?
14,500. It was the auctioneer. He was pretty good.
Well, I don't know.
Well, what was so
it's a pretty
crazy?
good team there.
Yeah, it was a really fun night because I was emceeing that night, and it's the biggest night at Hunt Expo. You know, there's 2,500 people in the crowd, and you know, it's funny. I remember thinking to myself, like, that's so awkward. Like I'm, you know, auction item number 34 is the, you know, Arizona strip tag, da 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 da. And I'm reading off the items, and then John rolls with his auctioneering talent, and I come to the item, and I'm like, up next, we beaded whitetail skull by some chick named Jana Waller. You know, like it was just awkward, and crowd kind of laughed. But you know, that doubled my all-time record. I think the record before that was 7,500.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, or 7,1, I don't know. But yeah, it doubled my all-time record. So all you need is 2 people who really want it.
Yeah. That's super cool.
Yeah. And I have to shout out to Split Image Replicas. He donates that replica to me every year. And
cool.
I think, you know, 230, 40, whatever inch muley is just, you can't come across those deadheads, you know, maybe. But yeah, it's just been great. And that buck was a walking, living buck where you can go online, see pictures of him, you know, and it's been a good team. The last 5 or 6 years I've done that for the Hunt Expo, and it's raised a bunch of money. All of that goes back to conservation. So it's just a fun way to kind of, like we talked about earlier, protecting what we love, you know, having fun with artwork. You know, it's so fun watching people bid on it back and forth, and it's just been kind of a really fun part of my life.
No, it's cool.
Thank you.
So what do you got coming up this summer and this fall? Do you have some cool hunts?
Yeah, I do. I have a really cool hunt I'm super excited about. So to back this up just a little bit, I'm sort of the TJ Maxx of the hunting community. I rarely pay for hunts. You know, like I've used outfitters before, but a lot of outfitters, to be completely transparent, they want the advertisement.
Right.
So they're like, come hunt with us, do a show, and you barter.
Right.
And otherwise, I'm primarily 85% a DIY hunter. Mm-hmm. Or if an outfit like R&K Hunting out of Wyoming, they're an amazing outfit. They have huge deer and nice elk. If they've given me hunts, I typically will give that one to a veteran and then film it. And because it's just the highlights of my life. I have amazing adventurous lifestyle, but the highlights emotionally of my life have been moments with warriors like Jonathan Blank, Clint Romachet, you know, all these Eric, triple amputee I took on his first elk hunt. Those moments are just incredible. Yeah. But on average, my hunts are pretty DIY public land hunts. And unless you're like going up to Alaska or something like that. Well, those have been DIY too, but so I sold my house here on March 1st in Montana, and I did pretty well. It's a good market here in Montana. Yeah. And I have 2 bucket list hunts that are left on my list that are high up there for me personally. And one is a grizz hunt that I'm doing next year with Lance Kronberger. Oh, cool. And John and I are going 2-on-1 with Lance next year, and John's up first. He's that's his number one thing. And we've done a couple of grizz hunts before, and we have not notched that tag. So I really want John to get a grizz. And then mountain goat. And I said to myself, and there's some conservation tags you can bid on in Utah. And I said, you know, if I can get a tag for XYZ dollar amount, and it's going to be cheaper than if I bought the mountain goat hunt with an outfitter. I got to fly heath to Alaska or BC. I've got to tip the outfitter because that's how they make a living, right. You know, a few grand. So when you do the math, if I could get a goat hunt for XYZ here in Utah, that's, you know, going to be cheap. So I went to an auction. I got outbid the first one. I went to another SFW banquet. I mean, I think I went to 30 of them this year, hence being the wife of an auctioneer. Yeah. But and the funniest thing is John didn't even know I was bidding on this one. I had a friend of mine bid because it's just awkward. I don't want to be in the crowd and be like, oh, who's that chick, Skull Bound, bidding on that much on a tag? Must be not the whole must be nice attitude. Right. So I didn't want anyone to know I was bidding. And so I had a friend bid for me, and I got it underneath what my max was. Awesome. Yeah. And John I could see his face like, okay, wait. And he looks at me, and I'm freaking out at the table, and he was like, Was that you? I'm like, it was. So like people probably figured it was me.
Yeah.
But that's not like me to
Yeah.
do that. But it was only because I sold my house and kind of splurged a little bit. And, you know, the older I get, I mean, my knees are, and I'm no Cam Haynes. My knees, I don't know about Cam. I don't know how Cam does it. My knees are killing me already. And so I just, you know, the older I get, I'm willing to splurge a little bit like that.
Right.
So I've got a Utah mountain goat tag that I'm super excited for.
Cool.
I've got a Montana elk tag in 270. I'm hoping to draw Iowa muzzleloader again for a nice whitetail. And if I do, John and I put in together. He's never killed a big whitey. He's not from the whitey world, so I'd love to see that go down.
Yeah.
I was going to archery Wyoming antelope, but I kind of put that on the back burner just with the move and new house and all that. But the most exciting hunt I'm looking forward to is my personal mountain goat, and then I'm sure I'll be filming another veteran hunt. Haven't quite lined it down either with Wishes for Warriors or Hunts for the Brave. So
Cool.
yeah.
That's really cool. You do that for the veterans. It's really cool.
Well, I appreciate that. It's actually very selfish. Like people say to me all the time, "Thank you so much for that," and it's really in all complete transparency and honest. It is so amazing to be with these guys and gals. I did a couple of gals hunts too, but with what I'm more referring to as guys who have lost a limb. What I've gone with single amputees, double amputees. Eric Galvin was like the best human being on the planet. He's a triple amputee. To be able to be with them on this hunt, and in the beginning, you know, it can be a little nerve-wracking for them. How am I ever going to do this? You know, and they're hard hunts. They're still hard. We're not driving around in a four-wheeler going down to the spigots looking for elk in the evening. We're climbing the mountains. And it all honestly started from a Montana Navy SEAL named Bo Richenbeck. I got hooked up with Bo through my buddy Jared Ogden, who said, "Hey, would you ever want to take Bo on a hunt?" I'm like, "Heck yeah." And Bo didn't grow up hunting because he was a hockey player. And you know how sports are when you're good at something. His dad even gave up hunting for years to cart him around for his hockey matches.
Right.
Well, then Bo went into the SEALs and got stepped on an IED his first deployment, lost both of his legs above the knee. I still think he's the only one of two Navy SEALs who've lost both legs above the knee, which, if for anyone who knows anything about prosthetics, it's a game changer when they're above the knee. So, and you can go watch all these episodes, but we went, and thanks to Rich Birdsell, who is an outfitter over near Cascade, Northern Rockies Outfitters. I called him up and I said, "Would you be willing to host Bo?" And he said, "Absolutely, no hesitation." And that beast, Bo, so the first day he was on his prosthetics, but they were so unwobbly. It was really uneven ground. And we were up in the mountains. I mean, either the four-wheeler or the track chair only got us so far. Right. And then we walked, and he was with me and his dad kind of walking along, and he was just exhausted. And he said, I'm going to take him off. So he took off his prosthetics, spins on these plates to the bottom of his stumps, and he literally crawled the mountains for 8 days.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
And
crazy.
It was the last night of our hunt. We actually extended a day, but it was our last night to be there. We had spotted these 3 bulls going up over a ridge into a big bowl. And we let's bank on that bowl. We know they should be in that bowl. And it took us all day to get up there. It was mid-morning that we watched them go into there. And we had to drive around. We had to get him in his track chair, take the track chair up as far as we could. And then he crawled the rest of the way. And by then we're up there, it's mid-afternoon, and we're camping here. We didn't even have food besides some snacks, but we just camped on this bowl. And it was getting dark, and I was just starting to get so deflated. And while it was an amazing 8 days, I wanted Bo to grip that bull so bad. And sure enough, right before dark, I don't even know I think it was his dad who said, "I got a bull." Actually, it's funny. It was like an hour and a half before dark. I glassed up a bull tipping over another ridge. And I thought, oh no, they worked out of this bull while we took all day getting up here, and they went to the next, and there's no way we're getting Bo over there.
Right.
So I came back to the group. I went and I checked and I glassed. I didn't see anything. I came back to the group and I said, I couldn't see. I don't know if it was them, but this is our only shot to bank it here. And it was one of those God moments, of just please, 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 please.
Yeah.
And sure enough, his dad's we're up above a bull. We're looking into a bull at 300 yards. We see this bull start to rake, and it's super thick. And then we see another bull right by him. I'm like, they're here. They're in this bull. Bo puts a smack down on this bull. He drops, and then it was just floodgates opened. I don't know for Bo, but I'm crying. His dad's crying. Like, it was a moment for me. And then when we finally got him down there, we had a little bit of light left. And when he was able to get up in this thicket, mind you, he's crawling through this thick, nasty ass terrain, and to put his hands around the antlers of that bull and to just soak it in for a minute. And he's looking at him, and the bull had a tine broke off, and he goes, he's an amputee too. And we all start laughing. And it was just one of the best nights of my entire life.
Yeah, it's super
It was so fulfilling. That episode you can actually see. So last season, season 4, I put my 13 favorite veteran hunts together. So last year it's all veteran hunts, and you can just boom, 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 binge watch it. And they're just amazing stories. Not only you just feel so patriotic. You know, we try to do a really good backstory on them of where they came from, what were they doing in the military, how did they get injured, you know, what has it been like afterwards. And, you know, like I heard you talking to Brett on your podcast about suicide and, you know, what it means to get these warriors back out into the mountains is incredible in and of itself.
Yeah.
But really that was the start of it all. And every year I've done a hunt like that, sometimes 2. And
it was really cool. Like even like watching Cole Kramer carry Jonathan Blank up and shoot a goat, you know, and,
isn't that amazing?
It is. It's really cool that there's people like you and Cole, and there's other people doing it as well. Taking veterans out hunting, and like you say, it gives them kind of a new mission. They need a challenge. They need something that's not easy. That's not, you know, the hunt might be being given to them, but like they still have to go earn it. And it's a challenge. And these are guys that quite frankly need challenges. They want challenge.
Not only that, the camaraderie too. Like think about it. And I've had a lot of campfire chats with these guys, and they come back from being, whether it's 4-year deployment, military service, 4 years, 8 years, sometimes 20, they come back and they not only are dealing with survivor's guilt very often. A lot of these combat guys have watched their best friends die in their arms. So they're dealing with survivor's guilt. They're dealing with, how do I acclimate? And look at the culture we live in. It disgusts me at times. You know, people not respecting where our country where it has been, and the fight that we've done for our freedoms. And
and then you stack on top even our own government, you know, like the way we left Afghanistan and the way we just, you know, you just feels like throw away all that sacrifice.
Exactly.
You know, if it was my son, and my son's sitting there missing his legs, and I turn the news on and I see, you know, what we just kind of pissed away, I don't know how people like that swallow that. Right. Like why did my kid, and I'm not saying at all that sacrifice wasn't, you know, it's that it wasn't worthwhile, but is it? Like, was it? Like, it's so frustrating. It's got to be so hard for those people to, you know, and not about them and their own legs, but they're, like you said, they're talking about, you know, the actual loss of life, right, of their teammates and the guys they went over there with, men and women, to then just watch our government in a couple weeks just piss it all away. Yeah. You know? And then you have them come back and often think about like getting an education, right? What do I do next? Oh, can you imagine being in that environment right now? And so a lot of these guys are lost. And it's that sometimes it's even the loss of the brotherhood. They've just spent 4 years. Team. Yeah. Now you're sitting in your, you know, apartment in Salt Lake, and, you know, everyone that you were around, it all just dispersed, and now you're just in the house in your town that you happen to move to or live in, and you don't have that brotherhood of seeing your boys every single day. Exactly. Know? And that support network, and whether they considered a support network or not when they were over there or when they were in, it really truly is. Like, they are the men and women that they can go and talk to, and, you know, give each other shit and tell each other to quit whining, quit being a bitch, you know, and get that kind of feedback from their buddies, but then also be able to actually talk about certain things in no way that, like, I can't, you know, and I've had some of these discussions with these guys, but like you and I can't truly actually, you know, relate to that. Right. No, truly understand what that. No. But when we get them back here and we can get them into it's not just a one hunt. It's often the camaraderie that
like you said, they're doing the challenge, right? And a lot of these guys are like, I didn't even like Eric. Eric doesn't even have a arm prosthetic. And every day he's got to put on his leg prosthetics, and and he's got a baby and a beautiful wife, and like just life can be very challenging. But these guys come back, and it's not just the brotherhood, but it's like you said, the task, accomplishing something. But then it can often be sort of a newfound friendships with hunting buddies. Yeah. Wishes for Warriors is a great group that actually has then events where throughout the year that if you're a part of Wishes in any way, shape, or form, come go bowling with us, come climb the mountain with us, come do some river rafting with us. Like, it's almost another way to, I've had a ton of the guys I've taken with who really bonded with the guides they were with, and then they've stayed friends, or they've done other hunts together. Right. And so and not only that, a really big part of it for me is them realizing how healing Mother Nature is. Right. Not just to be grounded and to be outside and sit on the ground and just feel the breeze go through the trees and watch that river flow. Like, it's just, to me, I always remind them to like get back into nature. You can do it, even with disabilities or even with prosthetics, get back into nature, and it's healing. It's totally healing. Yeah. And it's funny. And it's amazing how in the course of a hunt, whether it's a 7-day hunt, 10-day hunt, whatever, how you just become really close, you connect. And Tom Spooner said it the best one time I was talking with him. He's the warrior who started Warrior's Heart in Texas. It's a 30-day inpatient suicide prevention, for alcoholic, for anyone, for first responders, but whether you're treating depression or alcoholism or anything, it's the first facility of its kind like that. And before it even started Warrior's Heart, he was explaining to me why it was necessary in veteran suicide. And, he founded Mission 22, but he said it best. And I always try to relay it so people understand, like, when guys come back from, and men and women come back from the war, picture them standing there with a cup, and it's a cup of burden and guilt and regret and, pride and all these emotions. And that cup of guilt they're now supposed to deal with. Right. But it doesn't belong to them. It belongs to every single American citizen who gets to reap the benefits of what they're doing to protect our freedom. Right. And he said, if these men and women could learn to not hold that in, but every time they feel close with someone enough to talk about what happened, they can pour out a little of that cup of burden, because it's all of ours to share, and maybe pour a little bit out here and now pour a little bit out here and share that. Then they're left with a cup that maybe is only a quarter fill, and that they can deal with. Right. And so when he described it to me like that, it's the camaraderie, but the communication, the sharing, and the bonds, and hopefully it be preventative. And even if they take that back to other buddies who are suffering, it's more than just a hunt.
No, it's a great way to put it. And it's what frustrates me to the ultimate degree is that, after the way we leave, after the last 20 years, all that stuff, then it seems like our government is really quickly wanting to basically go back and do it again, like with the Ukraine stuff going on and whatnot. And I just wish our leadership in our country would measure very carefully that decision of going to war and what that true cost is. Yeah. And like, is this thing we're talking about really actually worth making hundreds of thousands of those people have to carry those cups of guilt around? And those are the lucky ones. The other ones are the ones that didn't make it home at all. Right. And so, it really bothers me that we seem to just jump out of one and then, and completely screw it up at the end there. And then, and really all the way through, you can debate how you actually want to do it. And to me, in my opinion, war is war. War is the ultimate. It's the worst. And if you're going to go to war, then you're going to go to war all the way in. Right. And to me, if you're going to go with that mentality, if you're not willing to go all the way, like all the way, meaning, being okay with casualties of innocent people as well, men, women, and children, then you don't go. And that, to me, that's the measuring stick that, like, is this actually worth it or not? And if it's not, then there's got to be other ways to avoid it and keep from, I got a boy that's 15 years old. I mean, he's 3 years away from being at that age. And I have no faith in our political leaders right now and being okay with them making that decision whether or not to send my kid over there.
Right.
Especially after seeing, you know, for 20 years, and I don't think we had a casualty over there in you know, the last 2 years of that Afghanistan war. And you know, for the record, with all that stuff in regards to all that, I can understand why people were tired of it and wanted to get out of it. But there's ways to exit. There's ways to get out of that where you're not placing, you know, a dozen Marines on an indefensible gate,
right?
You know, as basically as just sitting ducks and bait, you know. So
well, the thing that me as well, I agree with everything you just said, but like it's so sad to me that I believe that in schools, both, you know, junior high, high school, and college especially, they're teaching kids to hate this country. They're teaching kids, in my opinion, they're not only teaching them to hate this country, but they're leaving out the important aspects of what our kids, our forefathers, our grandpa, what everybody has fought for. Mm-hmm. And they're also forgetting about the fact that there are people out there, other countries, that simply want to destroy us.
Right.
You know, Clint Romeshay was the guest speaker at this last Hunt Expo, and I thought he was just brilliant. And to me, the best that the Expo's ever had. And he says, hey, when we were over there, you know, you have to understand, all they cared about was destroying our freedoms, destroying Americans and what we believe in and what we fight for, freedom of speech, freedom of, you know, the Second Amendment. And he said, but we weren't over there because we hated them. It wasn't about that. We were over there fighting because we loved the men beside us.
Yeah.
And that was really powerful, and I think it's important to remember. And I'm really looking forward to the next decade to see if we can get back on track.
Yeah, and to close out, I mean, the one thing that I try to tell these guys that I think sometimes sit here with that question of like, was it worth it? Was everything that I did worthwhile? And you know, that leads to a lot of depression and the wondering why they sacrifice so much. You know, and I've told several of my buddies, the one thing that you guys did that can't be taken away by any government or anything is you provided literally an entire generation. So if we were there for 20 years and you take a 5-year-old at that point when we went in there, 20 years later, that kid's 25 years old, and we allowed in a lot of those places over there for that kid to grow up and live as free as possible and go to school. And especially girls.
Right.
But we showed a whole generation that's now, you know, 25-year-olds to say 45-year-olds, you know, that were generally kids. Like even if you were 20, you're still a pretty impressionable kid. Mm-hmm. We showed them a little glimpse of what freedom looks like. And that might be a seed that we planted in the ground that might take a while to grow and see results of. But we might see that come back around where those people, that age group that's 20 now, when they're 40 and they're 50 years old, and they saw that, we don't know how that might change and how they might rise back up, might try and take back more control. But if nothing else, you gave them a 20-year break from terrible oppression,
right? You
know, and so that might be. There, you know, a lot of times you plant something, but you plant an apple tree in your yard, but it might be 5 years before you see any fruit from it.
Right. The seeds of change can take a while. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's a great point.
That's, to me, that's where I think a lot of those guys need to, if you put your daughters and your sons' faces on all those kids and said, hey, would you do that again for your own kids for 20 years of freedom? They'd do it in a heartbeat.
Right.
You know, and so, I think that's where a lot of those guys need to, you know, kind of settle on that part is worth fighting for.
Right.
You know,
I agree.
Well, thanks for coming by the shop. Where can people find you out there in this whole digital world?
In the world we live in.
What's your home address?
I don't even know, actually. Yeah. What is my new home address? I get to move in June 9th. No, they can find me Skull Bound TV, and that's my Instagram, Facebook, a little bit of Twitter. I'm not on Twitter as much, but Instagram, Skull Bound TV. They can watch Skull Bound Chronicles on CarbonTV for free. And the exciting thing is now, we just launched that this year. I have my own fast channel. So I have my own channel on CarbonTV that's actually on a ton of other networks as well. That's just 24/7 Skull Bound.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's all the last 14 years of episodes just cycling. You never know what you're going to get. I mean, I had it on the other day, and yeah, and you know, you can, it's an app, of course, a free app on your cell phone, but you can cast it to your TV, or if you have a Roku stick, Fire Stick, you can put CarbonTV right in your menu next to Netflix and Amazon. And so you can Google Skull Bound Chronicles is my current show, but Skull Bound TV is my channel. And it just, you never know what you're going to get. You know, you just, it's like regular TV, has commercials in it and stuff, but it's really fun. There's been episodes I've completely forgotten about that are just circulating.
I'm sure. It's kind of a walk down memory lane there.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Right now it sits under their live or their cams heading, but they're completely redoing the CarbonTV website. Should be up in about a month, I think. But yeah, it's kind of fun to have your own channel. And then that channel is also on a lot of other, like Local Now, Exomi, all these other digital platforms that are worldwide, and it just circulates. So it's kind of fun. Yeah, I think it's the big wave of the next TV world is having your own channel.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And getting married in a month from today.
Yep, month from today.
No cold feet, John. Is she getting cold feet?
Well, I don't know. He might be. I don't know if I'm not.
That's super exciting.
Yeah, we're excited. We're getting married in Utah in this cute little wedding chapel, and real simple though. I mean, you know, it's gone from, you know, not running down to the courthouse to actually having a wedding and family flying in and stuff, but real simple wedding. But I'm really excited for this next chapter. I'm still trying to talk him into taking on Waller, but I don't think I've succeeded so far. So I'm going to go, I think I'm going Jana Waller Bear. I might, it just sounds cool. Jana Bear.
Yeah.
It just sounds cool. But all my articles and artwork signed on the bottom, it's been Jana Waller forever. So I'm going to just go Jana Waller Bear. Whether I'll use all of it, it's a mouthful, but Jana Bear, I really like the sound of that. So thank you so much. I'm excited.
No, it's super cool. And he's a fantastic guy. You guys are awesome together. So it's a perfect fit. So.
Oh, thank you so much. I agree.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
We should hunt again together. That was fun in Texas.
I would love it. You name it. You name the date, time, species, and I'm there.
All right.